Welcome back to the Progressive Firefighter channel. My name is Terrance Simon. I'm the president of Progressive Firefighters of Atlanta, and today we'll be talking about Alpha Cities and Atlanta's impact on the world. And today's guest is George Howell.
Thanks for having me. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm currently a firefighter for the city of Atlanta. Next month will be 24 years. I work in various sections of the department, including airport operations, training, field operations, and also paramedic and hazardous materials.
Captain Howell, many of our viewers want to know what an Alpha City is.
An Alpha City, sometimes known as a world city or global city, is an important node in the worldwide economic system. The orders of importance for cities are basically 5 basic categories. You have alpha cities, you have beta cities, gamma cities, high sufficiency cities, and sufficiency cities. Now, in the alpha category, you have alpha plus plus, alpha, and alpha minus cities. Atlanta currently is an alpha minus city. That means that Atlanta is highly important in its ability to sustain impact on the world economic system.
So what does this mean to our department, Captain?
Well, it means that Atlanta is poised for economic growth and sustained growth over a period of time. If you drive through the city of Atlanta today, you can't count the number of cranes for high-priced construction projects that are currently under development, which means increased tax base to the city of Atlanta, which increases its ability to take care of its employees.
So where does Atlanta stack up in comparison to other cities?
Well, a little background. There are only 2 alpha plus plus cities on the world economic stage. That would be New York and London in Great Britain. Where Atlanta stacks up is alpha minus, but Atlanta is the 8th most important city in the United States on the world economic stage. Now, we have a sister city, Seattle, Washington, which is similar in size, similar in population. They have a similar number of personnel, equipment, and number of fire stations. But they are a beta minus category, which is 3 rungs on the economic ladder below Atlanta. Yet, their starting pay for a fire recruit is double, just a little bit more than $68,000 a year, whereas Atlanta starts their basic fire recruit off around $34,000. The question to be asked is, how can a city that has less economic impact on the world and generate less to the world economic system pay their employees more than double what Atlanta is, which we consider ourselves to be an international city?
So Captain, let me ask this question. With Atlanta being that high on the economic engine, how is it that Seattle is able to pay their fire department employees or all employees more than Atlanta's employees?
Good question. I'm glad that you asked that. You know, a lot of people say that the reason that there's such a pay disparity in western cities compared to East Coast cities is that it's more expensive to live. Well, we've done some research and we found that it's not so much coastal as it may be regional or even local that the pay disparity is so great. We will provide you web links later to show exactly where you can find this information for yourself. But in comparison to the 2 cities that we're mentioning today, Atlanta and Seattle, Atlanta actually has a higher cost of living than does Seattle. We based our study on affordable housing, which means at minimum wage, how many hours a month does it take to afford affordable rent, being a 2-bedroom apartment, while not using more than 30% of your gross income to pay that rent. In Atlanta, it takes 86 hours to pay that rent. In Seattle, it only takes 80 hours to pay that rent. So it's a big misnomer saying that the reason they get paid so much that it's more expensive on the West Coast than it is East Coast. For example, in the Washington, D.C., Maryland area, whereas it takes 86 hours in Atlanta to pay rent, it takes 137 and 136 hours a month respectively to pay rents in Washington, D.C. and Maryland. So see, it is not actually a West Coast, East Coast thing when it comes to affordable housing or affordable living in general.
Thank you, Captain. We really appreciate that information. I think a lot of times we get lost in our own department, the politics of it, and we don't really understand the economics and certain decisions that have to be made. What we're trying to do today is bring out the why, or to engage people in the conversation to go and research this information that you provided us with. You've done an excellent job. What is it that you think we need to do as a department regarding, number one, knowing how the finances work, okay? Understanding when there is misappropriation of funds, and how do we forecast our future when it comes to our own sustainability?
Well, Atlanta Regional Commission has a 10-year growth plan, whereas they have a projection of the whole metro Atlanta area and the direction that it's going to take, and they do a 10-year snapshot at a time as far as projecting these growth patterns. In the city of Atlanta, it is poised for economic growth throughout the next decade, which increases our tax base, which increases the coffers at City Hall, which increases their ability to take care of their employees and give timely raises and cost of living adjustments, as has been customary in generations past.
So, Captain, why is there such a disparity between the salaries here in Atlanta and the salaries in Seattle?
That's a good question. In a future episode, we'll do a head-to-head comparison of Atlanta Fire Rescue Department and our sister city, the Seattle Fire Department.
Thank you, Captain Howell, for coming out and explaining all this information to us. We'd like to have you back on a future episode so that you can show a head-to-head analysis of both cities, Seattle and Atlanta. Stay tuned, and thank you for watching the Progressive Firefighters of Atlanta channel.